Welcome to the Female Church Leaders Podcast, a weekly resource for women who love God, love the church, and are called to lead. I'm your host, Kadi Cole, church leader, author, and executive coach. After more than 30 years in full-time ministry, often as the only woman at the table, I understand how meaningful yet challenging your calling can be. That's why I created this podcast, to remind you that you're not leading alone. Each week, I'll share practical tools, biblical insights, and honest encouragement for the real challenges female leaders face in ministry, so you can grow your skills, strengthen your faith, and lead with more confidence and joy without burning out or striving to prove yourself. We drop a new episode every Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it. Let me start today with a leadership truth that might quietly challenge you. Most female leaders are actually not waiting for more confidence. They are waiting on competence. But we've often believed the opposite. We've been encouraged to speak up when you feel ready, step in when you feel confident, trust yourself more. And that sounds wise, but leadership doesn't actually work that way. Confidence does not usually come before action. Confidence comes after skill, after practice, after reps, after learning the language of leadership. And when we get that order wrong, we end up spiritualizing something that's actually only developmental. And that's what today's episode is all about. Here's the challenge I see over and over again for female church leaders. When something feels kind of shaky in our leadership, we assume it's us, that it's internal, that it's something we have to take sole responsibility for. Maybe I need to find more courage. Maybe I need to grow in my faith. How do I become more bold? But very often, what's missing isn't actually belief in yourself. It's simply training. And when we misdiagnose a training gap as a confidence problem, we apply the wrong solution. We ask for encouragement when what's actually needed is development. We ask for support when what's needed is skill. We ask for prayer when what's needed is practice. Now, all of those things matter, but they are not interchangeable. This pattern shows up clearly in leadership research. Susan Catalumo, in her TED Talk, identified a key shift that happens as leaders mature. Now, early on, when we first begin to learn as a leader, leadership development is highly structured. It's programmed. We read books, we take classes, we attend programs. There's a clear curriculum and defined outcomes. And women tend to be really great at structured programs. In fact, this is exactly why we do well in early levels of leadership. But as leaders grow, development moves from these structured programs to more personalized, relational, and informal development. So if you're someone who keeps going back for more and more degrees, you probably aren't getting any better at leading. You need to stop with the formal structured programs and move more towards mentoring, coaching, modeling, learning through proximity and actual hands-on experience. And this is actually where an important divergence begins. When leaders move from these formal environments to informal mentoring spaces, men and women approach this very differently. Men tend to ask for skill development, concrete things that they want to learn. Women, on the other hand, ask for help feeling more confident. They're focused on what's going on in the inside of them, what they're thinking about, and how they feel. Men will look at their mentor and say things like, hey, I want to get better at this, or I need to understand budgets, or I want help with strategic planning and my platform communication. Women will often go to their mentor and say, I'm not quite sure when I should speak up. I don't really feel confident when I'm leading. What can I do about that? Or maybe I'm struggling to find my voice and where I fit in. Now, here's the key point. Mentors, good mentors, will usually respond to what you are asking for. And over time, the difference between what we are asking for and what our male counterparts are asking for, that small difference compounds dramatically. Men are developed strategically and operationally, and their confidence grows as their skill set grows. Women, on the other hand, are developed more relationally and emotionally, and yet their confidence often remains fragile, mostly because they intuitively know they are still missing key competencies. Now, this missing top third of executive level leadership development, the strategic, organizational, and operational hard skills, it's known as the missing 33%. And if you don't receive actual training in that 33%, not only will you not have the skill sets you need, but your confidence will always feel shaky. Not because you're incapable, but because confidence is built upon competence. Think about it this way. Imagine being dropped into a country where you don't speak the language. Everyone else is fluent. They move quickly. They make decisions easily. They all laugh at jokes you don't quite understand. You don't think to yourself, I really lack confidence here. You think, oh, I don't speak this language. Well, leadership works the same way. If you were never taught the language of budgets and church revenue, long-term strategic planning, organizational systems, or staff culture dynamics, of course you will hesitate. Not because you doubt yourself, but because you're translating into a different language in your head. But once you learn the language, confidence will follow competency every time. This showed up so clearly for me in a recent conversation I had with a female pastor. She was explaining to me that she felt more depleted, more frustrated, and closer to the end of her rope than at any other point in her ministry career. Now, from the outside, you would never have guessed it. She's often pointed to as a picture of a successful female church leader. She was one of the first women to step into senior leadership in her context. She's effective. She's faithful. She's well respected. People rarely questioned how things are going for her because she's always doing such a great job. But she told me she was struggling internally and was just feeling done. But then she decided to attend a pastor's gathering in her city. Now, normally she confessed she wouldn't have gone. She's often the only woman in the room, and those spaces can feel tiring. Maybe you've had that experience. But she said she was open, maybe even desperate, that God might use this to encourage her in some way. She happened to sit next to a pastor from her network. Now, not a close friend, but someone she'd known for a while. And after the session, he looked at her and asked a simple question. Hey, how are you doing? And this time, she answered honestly. She told him she'd been struggling. She explained some of the dynamics that have kind of taken the wind out of her sails. And instead of patting her on the back and saying a quick prayer before he left, he actually took the time to remind her of her calling. He affirmed her specific giftedness. He recalled what God had already done through her leadership. And then, now this part matters, he asked her about the actual work. What's happening with the board? How's your staff really doing? What are you doing about it? What pressures are you feeling around the budget? Where are things getting stuck in your ministries? And they had a long, real conversation about real leadership issues. She told me she walked away more encouraged, more hopeful, and clear about what needed to happen next than she had felt in months. Why? Because for once, the conversation wasn't about how leadership felt. It was about leadership itself. She said it felt like oxygen. We actually solved some of my real problems. And then she added something that was very telling for all of us. I get invited into women's leadership spaces all the time, she said. I even have a women mentor assigned to help me. But most of the time, I only get to talk about my feelings about leadership, not the leadership itself. I think this was maybe actually the first time I had ever been able to have a real conversation about my job itself. That, my friends, is the missing 33% in real time. When women don't have access to skill-based leadership conversations, they internalize the gap as self-doubt. But the gap isn't internal. It's practical and developmental, and it's fixable. This is why access to higher level leaders matters so much for all of us. Female church leaders need access to leaders, both men and women, who have navigated the same level of responsibility and complexity, and they can speak from real lived experience into your world. Now, there are many generous, wise women and pastors' wives who offer encouragement, support, and care to female leaders, and that actually matters deeply. I hope all of you have that. Emotional and spiritual support is incredibly helpful. But unless someone has walked the road you're walking, carried the weight of higher level leadership decisions, navigated bosses, figured out budgets, managed complex staff dynamics, they can't really offer leadership answers to your leadership questions. They can ask how you feel, but they may not know how to help you move forward. And when female leaders don't have access to leaders who can talk about the work of leadership, they're left to figure it out alone or to assume their hesitation is spiritual rather than developmental. But when female church leaders gain access to real leadership development, something shifts. They stop over-spiritualizing, they stop apologizing for clarity, and they stop shrinking back in strategic moments. Not because they became confident overnight, but because they've learned how leadership actually works. See, the church doesn't need female leaders who only care deeply and work hard. It also needs female leaders who are equipped well and empowered to lead effectively for the sake of the whole body. So here's your one action step for this week. Take an honest look at where you've been putting your growth energy and ask yourself, be honest. Have I been focusing more on building my confidence or on building my leadership competency? Have most of my leadership conversations been about how leadership makes me feel or about the actual skills leadership requires of me? And if you are leading or mentoring other female leaders, ask yourself this important question. Am I helping these women grow in concrete skill sets that moves them forward? Or am I mostly offering encouragement and emotional support? Now, both matter, but confidence stabilizes when it's anchored in competency. So this week, I want you to identify one leadership skill, not to master, but simply to move toward. And then ask one clarifying question that helps you grow in that skill. Who could I learn this from? What's one key step I can take? What's one conversation I could have, and what would that look like? Not someday, not when things slow down, because that never happens in church work, but just take one intentional step this week. Because confidence doesn't grow in isolation. It grows when we learn, practice, and step closer to the work of leadership itself. Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings." Scripture honors skill. God does not call you and then shame you for needing to grow. He calls you and then he grows you. He forms you. So you don't have to wait to feel ready. You can start getting equipped now, and then your confidence will follow. If today helped you name something you've been sensing for a while, that you're ready to move beyond talking about how leadership feels and into developing the actual skills your leadership requires. This is exactly why we created Closing the Leadership Gap coaching cohort. We have a new group starting soon. You can check it out at closingtheleadershipgap.com. We designed it to directly address the missing 33% specifically for female church leaders. It's not about striving or fixing what's broken. It's about stewarding your calling well and growing with clarity, support, and intentionality. Remember, friend, you're not behind. You're growing into exactly who God has created and called you to be. And we are here to cheer you on every step of the way. I'm so glad we got to spend this time together on the Female Church Leaders Podcast. I hope you're walking away encouraged, equipped, and reminded that your calling truly matters. To keep growing, join us for our next Closing the Leadership Gap cohort at closingtheleadershipgap.com. It's a guided coaching experience, including live Q&A with me, designed to accelerate your leadership journey. If this podcast has been helpful to you, would you please take a moment to follow, rate, and share it? Your engagement helps the algorithms suggest our resources to female church leaders we haven't had a chance to meet yet. And don't forget to follow at Female Church Leaders on Instagram for encouragement and leadership tools designed just for you. You can also follow my personal feed at Kadi Cole, spelled Kadicole. Keep leading faithfully, keep growing your leadership gifts, and I'll see you next Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it.